I would like to express our gratitude to all of you today for being with us in the National Water Security Roadmap Symposium, Conserving and Restoring Our Waters to Sustain Growth. So this symposium is still part of the week-long celebration of the Philippine Water Week 2022, starting last March 15 towards the World Water Day celebration tomorrow, March 22. So I am Claire Espina, Information Officer of the National Water Resources Board, and I will be your host for today. A special shout out po pala to all our women participants in today's session, since March is also the celebration of the women here in the world and in the country. So happy Women's Month po. To formally begin the program, I would like to call on our virtual stage the OIC Undersecretary of NEDA's Investment Programming Group. He's none other than our ever supportive Undersecretary, Roderick M. Planta. Hi, sir. Good morning po.
Hello, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Maraming salamat, Claire. Maraming salamat po for this opportunity. Warm greetings to everyone. Good morning po, water friends. Maligayang Philippine Water Week, Advanced World Water Day. I guess let me start with what we know. We all know that surface water at about 126,000 million cubic meters per year. And ang atin naman pong groundwater is about 20,000 million cubic meters per year. So ano po yun, mga 86% saka 14% na hatian po yan. We also know, based on our statistics, that while water resources varies across regions, totoo po yung limited water availability per capita, totoo po yung water stress, at totoo po yung water scarcity. Fact of life po yun. In fact po, mga 1998 pa po, and napatunayan po ng ating Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan, may 3 pong regions po tayo, Region 1, 3, and 5, that are experiencing water scarcity. At ang NCR Calabarzon Region 7, absolute water scarcity. In fact, kung alam na po rin natin yung mga 9 critical areas natin, NWRB data rin po ito. Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, Davao, Baguio, CDO, cities of Angeles, Bacolod, Iloilo, Zamboanga, and yan, ito po, Siam po yun. Alam po natin na ang water stress po talaga ay ma-experience na po natin. And it is expected to worsen due to climate change, population growth, economic growth, and urbanization. And this is why we are here. Ito pong National Water Security Roadmap. So NEDA joins and support the NWRB and the DNR family for this virtual education campaign. We really commend yung leadership po ni Doc Bill David for getting us all together sa ating community, water community, to refine this water security roadmap over time. Sa ganang NEDA po, in our NEDA's perspective, ito pong National Water Security Roadmap is consistent with all development frameworks that you see out there. Ano pong ibig sabihin natin doon? Yung ambition natin 2040, SDG 6, yung Philippine Development Plan, Asian Water Development Outlook, yung Water Security Framework po ng UN Water, yung Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan. Napag-isipan po lahat yan. At isa pa po, ito pong Water Security Roadmap natin underwent participatory, collaborative, and inclusive consultations with various stakeholders. At higit pa po doon, meron po siyang menu of actionable items na sana may paliwanag po. And therefore, ang kasayahan dito is that meron po siyang call to action to us all in the community of water sector governance reform advocates. Kaya sa ganang NEDA po again, welcome po sa ating lahat. Thank you for joining us, and let's continue this journey together to bring meaningful reform sa ating pong water sector. Maraming salamat po. Back to you, Ms. Claire.
Thank you, sir. Salamat po for giving us that message. Thank you, sir, again. Maraming salamat po, and to give us another welcome message, please allow me to introduce the DNR Undersecretary for Attached Agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, Undersecretary Benito Antonio T. De Leon. Good day, sir.
To our distinguished guests, participants, and presenters, good morning to all of you. It is with great pleasure to welcome you all to this symposium. Today, we will talk about a pressing topic that concerns all of us, water security. Security is something we want to achieve, something we strive for. In doing so, we employ measures in our daily lives just to have the sense of security in different aspects of our lives. Be that as it may, there is still no guarantee in what future holds for us, especially if we become complacent with the things around us. Which is why we are all gathered here today to talk about a significant facet of human existence and how we can preserve, protect, and sustain our precious water resource. Water security has become a global issue due to the increasing water demand caused by the rapid growth in population and degradation of our water resources, aggravated by the impacts of climate change. As a result, fewer and fewer people have access to acceptable quality water for sustenance and livelihood. According to the World Research Institute, roughly 19.8% of the 167 countries around the world will experience extremely high water stress by 2040. In this data, the Philippines is projected to experience high water stress in the said year. In the National Water Resources Board, together with the National Economic Development Authority and other partner institutions and organizations, we have taken immediate action to formulate this water security roadmap. As a continuing endeavor, this roadmap aims to focus on implementing initiatives and strategies to carry out the proposed solutions towards sustainability of water resources throughout the country, thereby attaining water security, a critical natural resource for the present and future generations. The environment, one of the strongholds of this roadmap, will focus on the management, restoration, and protection of our water resources. A holistic approach is being called for as we need to consider the urban, economic, and regulatory aspects of water security. This symposium serves as a wonderful platform to hear your thoughts about this roadmap. So without further delay, I would like to give back the floor to our host to continue with the highlight of today's event. Thank you, everyone. Have a pleasant and fruitful day ahead.
Thank you so much, Yusek De Leon. Salamat po. So, before we go to the meat of this program, I would like to acknowledge the participants of today's session. Napakarami po natin. So, we are now at 152 and they are still coming. So, maraming salamat po. From the chat, I would like to mention some, pero po baka hindi ko kayo ma-mention lahat. We have DSWD Car, see? Ano po tayo from Luzon to Mindanao because I have read someone from Zamboanga. So, ayan po. May Menro, Menro, saan ba ito? Okay. And also, yung mga ano po nahihirapan with their internet connection na hindi makapag-turn on ang kanilang mga video, it's okay po, we understand that. So, okay. Menro Hamindan, yan, DNR Region 9, Watershed Management Unit, and hi Sir Chris, you're there. And of course, DNR Mimaropa, thank you po. O, yan, umabot. So, maraming salamat po for joining us today. Yan, Senro Oroquieta. Opo, salamat po sa inyo, DNR Policy and Planning Service from La Union. So we see that we are well represented sa different parts of the country. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. And for the most awaited part of this session, to present to us the National Water Security Roadmap Report, please all welcome the Policy and Program Division Chief of the National Water Resources Board, Engineer Susan P. Abano. Hi, ma'am.
Good morning, Claire. So,
Morning po.
morning sa ating lahat. So, ang dami pala nating participants, 156. So, okay. So, let me start now with my presentation because this might take a long time because it's very long. Okay. Is that okay, Claire? Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am. Kita na po.
So, I would like to present the National Water Security Roadmap, conserving and restoring our waters to sustain growth. Water is an integral component of economic growth and development, as well as an essential component for the well-being of the country. So hence, this Water Security Roadmap was prepared. So in 2016, the NWRB commissioned UPLB, Office of the Vice Chancellor, for research and extension in the preparation of the National Water Security Roadmap. There was an initiative between the legislative branch through the Office of Senator Lauren Legard as chairperson, the executive branch through the DNR secretary, and private sector, the former presidential flagship program, Secretary Ernesto Ordonez as the co-chairperson. The NWRB expanded the initiative and turned it into partnership. So the partnership expanded and included DNR, NEDA, Office of the Cabinet Secretary, Department of Agriculture, DPWH, DILG, House of Representatives, through the late Congressman Batucabe and some other institutions. So these partners became part of the steering committee tasked to provide strategic direction and leadership for the project. What's this? Ayaw na. Okay, so the framework for the Philippine Water Security Roadmap is consistent with the AUDO, which was mentioned by Yusek Eric, and the other existing water security roadmaps. It stresses the role water plays in the linkages on economic, environment, rural household, urban water security, and water infrastructure resiliency. At the same time, it recognizes the overarching impact of governance in water and the 5 key linkages. So climate change also impacts the water security. Okay, so this is still practically the same with the linkages, but illustrated as pillars of water security. So the columns represent the pillars that supports water security. So the content of the roadmap consists of the project, the present landscape, which contains demographics and water resources data and information, facts and figures obtained from partner agencies, and the linkages such as the action plans indicating short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies, as well as the inclusion of the monitoring and evaluation learnings as part of the report. Okay, so I think the report consists of around more than 130 pages. So the path to sustainability is to balance the environment, economic, and social needs, and to sustain growth. First is to protect the environment, to manage watersheds and the water resources, provide alternative water use sources, and address wastewater issues. So resilient infrastructure is essential to sustain water and environment, allows for growth even after disaster, and cater the social needs of low-income families that are vulnerable to impact of disasters. Second is to provide affordable water, raise funds for the economy, subsidy for household, even addressing sanitation concerns, and involve the people in protecting the environment. And there should be IEC and citizen science to mobilize people for water security. Third is for economic sustainability. There should be reforms that sustains demand for energy, agriculture, industry, and services. So governance allows reform that sustains demand for energy, agriculture, and this industry and services, and protect the environment. So the roadmap is a product of the that summarizes the result of the many FGDs conducted from 2017 to 2020. So it consists of challenges and actions and linkages. For the economic linkages, the challenge is meeting the demand by the various economic sectors. So as the economy grows, other industries and sectors will require more water. Water security for the economy will ensure sufficient water for agriculture, industry and services such as tourism and energy to achieve economic growth and development. So for agriculture, water is key to food production and security. So during disasters, including pandemics, the ability to provide food for the population or being self-sufficient is key to survival and sustainability. So greening of the agriculture sector, such as use of reclaimed water, rainwater harvesting, as well as indigenous farming techniques, can be documented, studied, and applied. So water availability and the infrastructure necessary to deliver the water are essential to sustain production and should be accelerated. So there is also a need to update the small-scale irrigation master plan to consider investment in irrigation systems, new innovations such as use of solar irrigation, use of reclaimed water and rain stimulation for agricultural use areas, and watershed should be studied for prolonged droughts. For the industry, water security for industry and services would provide sufficient water supply for micro, small, and medium industries, as well as large industries. In the debate last Saturday, they mentioned that the MSME should be expanded. So I think we need more water for MSME. Okay, so for the challenge of services on tourism enterprise zone is the need for water supply towards sustainable tourism industry. The action to address the challenge is providing adequate water infrastructure, including alternative sources. And also sanitation services needs to be addressed in tourism areas. For the environment, water security cannot be achieved without environmental protection, particularly in the restoration of groundwater, surface water, watershed, and managing runoff and preserving critical infiltration. Groundwater and surface water with good water quality need to be protected and preserved. So included here is managing the runoff, which is also critical to water security. So some of the challenges is uncontrolled expansion of impervious surfaces that leads to increased runoff. So action should include creation of a framework for runoff and review laws and practices for land conversion, and probably pilot models to be done on how to contain the impact of land conversion on runoff and filtration. And for the urban, the challenge for the urban household is meeting the water demand to urban centers, towns and cities, considering affordability to all consumers. The issue on sanitation, flooding, and drainage needs also to be addressed. So the action identified is to provide affordable and safe water supply and address household wastewater drainage and flooding problem. So for the rural water in the country, it is characterized with low demand and sparsely distributed population. So the challenge is meeting water demand with clean, safe, and affordable water, including rural sanitation. The action is to provide adequate water supply and addressing sanitation. And there should be a program that will include measures and incentives on how to enhance entry of microfinance deemed to be viable. So the challenge to resiliency for water security is to build the capacity to withstand disasters, respond during disasters, and to rebuild immediately after disaster. So the action plan is building resilient water infrastructure and preserving and protecting water against disaster and climate change, and addressing drainage and flood-related issues. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, the country must be prepared to respond to pandemics, to other infectious diseases and other public health threats. Also included is the climate change that pose challenges in water security. As such, strengthening the research related to climate change, such as forecasting, mitigation, adaptation, can help ensure water security. So the categories of action include short-term action that can be included in the agency's annual investment plan and can be carried from 2 to 3 years. So the medium-term action plan coincides with the term of the president and can be carried for up to 6 years. And the long-term action plan is probably up to 25 years. So water security for the economy. So on the water, food, energy nexus, some of the short-term strategies, including considering water demand from the energy sector in the national water demand, evaluate impact of emerging less carbon technologies to water demand, and conduct studies that integrate water, food, energy nexus. And such long-term include implementing technology that can be used to mitigate the impacts of climate change in the water, food, energy nexus. So some of the identified short-term plan for industry and services include provision of sufficient and uninterrupted water supply for industry and services, maintain a lower water stress by tapping alternative sources such as rainwater and assessment of water sources within the tourism enterprise zone. So we need to identify water sources outside of the TEZ, incorporate water infrastructure and sanitary facilities in the local tourism master plans, include establishment and strengthening of municipal water organization having jurisdiction of the tourism economic zone, enterprise zone. And for the medium term up to the long term, we need to pilot test the water reuse of water reclamation in industry and services, and institutionalize incentive for water reclamation in industry and services. We need also to set target to maintain present level of water stress and implement water supply and wastewater treatment plans, and incorporate TEC water administration regulation into the central administrative and regulatory body that will be discussed later under the governance. Demand management for industry services. Users aim to reduce water usage in the industry and service sector. As a key step to this program is the creation of water reduction partners that would help in the assessment of water use and promote efficient water use, and work with household to reduce water demand. So probably there could be a research on this one. With the help of the academe or any other institution to conduct demand management for industry and services. So we need also to review the process flow programs to identify processes that require a lot of water. And for the medium term, we pilot test the rainwater harvesting as an alternative water source for industry and services, and then pilot cases for water efficiency uses. And for the long term, adopt and develop water efficient technologies for industry and services. We need also to, for the short term, adopt and promote water efficient technologies, research and adopt alternative processes that will conserve water, And then for medium term, preparation of water shortage and conservation plans showing water demand and supply projection and the impact of water conservation plan. For the long term, we need to adopt and promote water efficient technologies and research and adopt alternative processes that will conserve water. Still on water demand, they have identified so many short, medium-term, and long-term action plan. So increase awareness through IEC, develop study for water demand at tourism enterprise zone. And then for the long term, identify waste reduction partners and create partnership and incorporate lessons learned from areas for pilot studies. And for agriculture, the identified short-term strategies include updating and assessing the water efficiency of irrigation systems, incorporate findings in the demand management programs, identify and implement technologies that would reduce agriculture water demand, and promote harvesting and use of rainwater for irrigation system. As you all know, the agriculture sector is the biggest user of water. So for the medium-term strategies include implementation of rainwater harvesting that will benefit agriculture and implement program for irrigation efficiency. And for the long-term strategies include construction of appropriate and adequate needed for agriculture. So rainwater harvesting is always should be included in all our plans. So still on agriculture, for the short term, we should conduct a pilot study for rainwater harvesting, summarize the lessons learned of using reclaimed water, study and engage rain stimulation for agriculture areas and watersheds to address the problem of prolonged droughts and minimize their effects to standing agricultural crops, and updating the small-scale irrigation master plan. Okay, for the medium term, it still reclaim the use of wastewater for agriculture use. Some more for agriculture is inventory of small-scale irrigation master plan and updating the master plan, and promote water saving, laser land leveling, and other related technologies for enhanced water management, disseminate and adopt water saving technologies. Another, strengthening and sustaining organized irrigators associations and assist DIAs for linkages to other government and non-government organizations and agencies. The irrigation for rice palay include close coordination with farmers and irrigators association regarding water cutoff schedule and construction schedule, the adoption of alternative wetting and drying, and the dissemination of information on approved cropping calendar and water delivery schedule, and the irrigation for the diversified crops, strict implementation of NIA MC63, and the adoption of diversified crops in national communal irrigation system. Also for agriculture, increased investment in small-scale irrigation projects, utilizing renewable energy sources, and mountain agro biosystem engineering, soil conservation technologies will be implemented in parallel to irrigation and other rural infrastructure. And for medium term, conduct research on drought resistant and or crops that do not require a lot of water to produce. For the environmental protection for water security, the challenges of environment for water security is that in the natural cycle before development has more infiltration and less runoff. However, after development, infiltration became less and more runoff is experienced. So managing and restoration of groundwater, surface water, and the watershed are the strategies identified, including management of runoff to caution impacts of development. So for the short, medium, and long term, water supply outside Metro Manila is being sourced from groundwater. So the resource is important for water security. And since the groundwater is invisible, it can be visible by monitoring the aquifer. Construction of groundwater monitoring wells and measuring water level and water quality will provide us necessary information on the condition of the aquifer that will aid decision makers in managing the groundwater. So for medium-term strategies, it includes addressing pollution to groundwater and addressing the pollution. For the long term, managing groundwater will be probably the responsibility of the Department of Water, which will be which will be discussed under governance. So for managing surface water, short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies can be implemented to probably manage groundwater. This includes strategies such as installation of more gauging stations for research and regulation, linking permitting and surface water monitoring. And for medium to long term, it includes surface water assessment, like what NWRB is doing, and integrating surface water to groundwater in the conduct of assessment in the long term. For watershed management, managing watershed are integral to the management of both surface water and groundwater resources. However, managing watersheds does not happen overnight, but it requires long-term solutions such as restoration of denuded watersheds, watershed watts, and buyback program. A fund should be established for maintenance of the watershed. So managing runoff and preserving the critical infrastructure infiltration. So the uncontrolled expansion of built-up areas leads to an increase in impervious surfaces, which in turn leads to an increase in runoff. So increase in runoff contributes to flooding. So some of the short-term strategies include creating framework for water regulation on runoff, identifying critical areas for recharge, and review laws and practices for land conversion. For the medium-term strategies, it should include integration of critical areas in preserved areas and integration of land development processes with runoff and regulation. For the long-term strategies, institutionalization of runoff controls and approvals. So for wastewater regulation and monitoring system is also important in the control of pollution, which reduces the amount of available freshwater resources in the country. So for short term, we need to create a framework for continuous real-time monitoring of wastewater treatment, pilot testing of the continuous real-time monitoring, and separating the economic and financial regulation of wastewater from water. For the medium term, we need to create a pilot implementation of continuous real-time monitoring and creating also a pilot implementation of separate economic and financial regulation. For the long term, the functions of various agencies should be integrated into one agency with adequate coverage of the entire country. Building resilient infrastructure and protecting and restoring natural storage of water. So water infrastructure should be resilient against these disasters. So climate-related phenomenon, public health concerns such as the spread of communicable diseases. So the country experiences various disasters annually. From 2010 to 2019, we have this computed amount that was due to the disasters, around 463 billion pesos. So annually, and some of these affects the water infrastructure and the water supply. So there are, however, lessons learned and water systems were improved because of the lessons learned. In this case, we one of the example is the Typhoon Sendong, which hampers the operation of Cagayan de Oro Water District. But after the outbreak, they were able to improve their system. Also, the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, the government agencies prepared strategies to provide water for hygienic purposes to the population. Okay, more for resiliency for short term is documenting lessons learned, pilot assessment of water infrastructure, and creating framework for resiliency. For long term, we prepare disaster resiliency long-term program and plan that should be integrated with NDRCC, and institutionalization of water resiliency planning and review with national government agencies and local government units. Reforming water infrastructure. So streamlining and consolidating the functions of the more than 30 water-related agencies into a central agency and separating the administration and regulation with the financial and economic regulation is probably an effective and efficient water governance. So the critical to providing water security in the country is governance of the water sector. And the proposed action would require streamlining the various water agencies and consolidating its functions under one central agency. So the strengthening for the short, medium, and long term, the strengthening of NWRB can be divided into 3 stages. The water agencies streamlining and consolidation under one central agency will be a long-term strategy, and expanding the NWRB regional offices can be done from the short term to medium term. So for the medium term, we need also to carry out the mandate. Corresponding budget should be included for NWRB regional expansion and operation. And NWRB should be the backbone of the future Department of Water. The board should be expanded to fulfill the role in the future. So in addition, the board should be expanded to its regional reach, provided the agency with ample manpower and resources. And for the long term, strengthening the NWRB during the transition process or in the period that the creation of a central or apex body for the water is being done to provide interim central direction and leadership. So as I have said, NWRB should be the backbone of the future Department of Water. So we are still waiting for the Congress to enact the law for the creation of the Department of Water. And so the Department of Water will provide central direction and leadership to the more than 30 water-related agencies with overlapping mandates related to water. So for resource regulation, it's a part of ensuring water security within the sector. So a venue should be created to harmonize the process and functions of various agencies. So water quality and quantity monitoring should be integrated under one agency. So for the medium to long-term strategies, we should be able to employ market-based approaches to regulate resources. So common approach is probably raw water pricing to limit and preserve the resource. And so also the existing water code of the Philippines could be amended as part of the medium term to long-term strategy. So these are also short-term strategies for strengthening regulation for water withdrawals. So withdrawals of water should be placed under the Water Resource Agency. Where there are multiple uses, the Water Resource Agency should prioritize the use. Okay, cumulative withdrawals. The total withdrawals should be monitored using monitoring wells. Permits will be issued based availability and cumulative withdrawals. And withdrawals of water should be placed under the water agency, or the same thing where there are many users to prioritize the use of water. So water quality regulation should be strengthened by centralizing all units involved in implementing water quality regulation under the Water Resource Agency. So the implementation of water quality regulation should be coordinated and integrated with wastewater under Water Resource Body. So creating water fund for resource regulation. So creating water fund for water resource regulation means a water fund should be established that could be a combination of different funds raised from consumers and penalty for polluters. So the actual inclusion of fund component or components depend on the government and should be finalized by the government. Okay. So this is a sample water fund form that could be collected. Raw water charge is an example of water fund that could be collected for extracting groundwater or surface water. This could be used for programs to restore the groundwater projects for future use. Okay, so components could be watershed fees, groundwater restoration charges, water subsidy, surface water restoration, and payment for ecosystem services. So watershed fees is the charge per cubic meter to the customer with the intent of maintaining and restoring the watershed. It will spend on restoring and protecting the watershed and the watershed related activities. So activities will be defined by the agency. For example, is the buyback cost for watershed lands with settlement should be part of it. Missionary Fund is a fund that could be used to provide consumer subsidy to commercially non-viable areas. The fund will assist non-viable domestic water users to sustain provision of water. So once viable, they could graduate from missionary programs. Economic and financial regulation. Okay. So the economic and financial regulation should be done to allow for full recovery of water projects and for optimal use of water. So the regulatory framework should be undertaken by an independent quasi-judicial body. So the short-term strategies include creating a common framework to integrate various regulatory agencies to improve regulatory capacities and improve tariff formula. So the long-term strategy is to have a common and uniform regulatory process to all water service providers. Still, for strengthening regulation for water withdrawals, for the short term, we need to develop common data report for all water service providers that are regulated by different government agencies. We have, for the NWRB, the Listahang Tubig could be a venue for this common data. Separate the economic and financial regulation of water from wastewater, and review and improve the joint venture guidelines to encourage more investment in water and wastewater sector. For the medium term, we need to create a framework for the regulation of rural water that would allow limited government subsidy to non-viable rural areas. Innovations, research, data banking, and capacity building. So as an overarching or encompassing linkages to governance is innovations, research, data banking, and capacity building. So there is little or no investment and scarce application of emerging technologies related to water as well as related research and development. And there should be a center for collaboration between the government, the academe, and private sector to address the technology, innovation, adaptation, and pressing issues in the sector. So capacity building and data banking with regular funding from the government. The center should pursue approaches and practices for long-term water security. Data banking and standards is very important. We need to establish standards for data collection, storage, and distribution. So data is also essential for resource and economic regulation. So research and development unit related to water resources, irrigation should be created. Climate research and development should also be included for the next 6 years or medium-term strategies. So the academe should scale up R&D to address short and long-term water-related issues. Empowering the citizens, require them to do their share in securing water for the present and future generations, while creating venues for participation. So there is a need to institutionalize the public participation for water plans. This will cultivate also the citizens' science for water security. It allows the public to probably voluntarily participate in scientific processes and advance scientific knowledge by asking questions, asking observations, conducting experiments, and collecting data or developing low-cost technologies. So the citizens' movement has shown to be effective based on experiences from other countries. So citizen science would allow experts and knowledgeable citizens to also share their time and efforts for future water security. For the monitoring, evaluation, and learning, monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework help to evaluate and improve programs that include multiple grantees pursuing similar activity objectives through different means of context. So monitoring comprehensively means taking a closer look of project objectives, theories of change, implementation plans, key performance indicators to illuminate successes and challenges that project implementers. So evaluation means to take a deeper analytic look at a subject of the project chosen for using innovative strategies, achieving desired outcomes, operating in a diverse set of contexts. So learning continuously means to have relevant, timely information as grant initiatives unfold and implementation improvement are still possible. I think this will be, the MEL will be next activity to be undertaken for the way forward. Okay, So way forward for the roadmap is to strengthen the NWRB, working with other agencies to implement the roadmap, securing funds, and continuing consultation with sectoral representatives, other water-related agencies, and cascading water security plans and strategies to regional, provincial offices, and the public, and periodic updating of the roadmap. I think this is the last slide. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you, Ma'am Susan. Okay, so far po, we have 3 questions from the chat box, and we'll be addressing your concerns. Right now, we have the top officials of NWRB and NEDA and other involved personalities in this project to answer your questions. So sa mga gusto pa po magtanong, please take this opportunity today. So, okay, I will throw the question now, ma'am. For the first question that we received from the chat box is from Help Davao Engineer Christy Galliano. In the water, food, energy nexus, are impacts of mining activities within the host watersheds factored into the roadmap? Thank you. That's the first question, Ma'am San.
There is no specific section on mining in the economy, but however, it is impacted in the environment section as mining impacts your watershed. Example would be pollution and clearing of watershed for mining operations.
Thank you, Ma'am Susan. Would our other panelists like to add to the answer? Meron pa po ba tayong idadagdag? So again, are impacts of mining activities within the host watersheds factored into the roadmap? So okay, siguro po in a while we can go back to the question. There's another question from Deborah Lily Lau. Who will conduct water demand study? Is there one being conducted? I believe, ano po? Yan.
Yeah,
Sige
Claire,
po.
if I
Yes,
may,
sir. Apo.
Yeah,
Ayan
as
po,
for
our Executive
the-
Director, Dr. Sevilio
yeah,
Dida
thank you
Jr.
for that question. As far as the water demand study, right now the NWRB is preparing some programs that will institutionalize or integrate water demand study dun sa mga activities natin, particularly on water supply and utilization. So but previously I think we have some USAID conducting some pilot studies in Mindanao for the water demand management study. However, WRB is now embarking a major program on water demand management study to integrate this into the process, particularly on the management of our water supply.
Thank you, sir. Dr. David. Ma'am, meron po ba tayong add pa? If no more, we can proceed with the third question. So our third question is from PWB, Ms. Yoli Gomez. Hi, Ms. Yoli. How will gender be addressed in the roadmap, considering the critical role of women in water management? Yan, maganda to. Timely because it's Women's Month.
In our GOD plans and programs for water resources for the NWRB, we have included so many programs like rainwater harvesting, water conservation measures, establishment of groundwater monitoring wells, and other information and education campaign to men and women, so that we could also consider gender as part of this one.
Claire, dagdagan ko.
Yes, sir. Sige po.
Yeah.
Yusek Planta.
Thank you, Miss Yoli. Actually, yung pong ating framework na water security framework, meron pong mga overarching concerns po doon eh. Cross-cutting, pwede rin nating sabihin ganun. Basically, ano po yun? Good governance, financing. So papasok po yun doon sa sa good governance rin yun. Pwede rin natin po siyang ilabas. Pero technically, what we're saying is that it's all over there doon sa 5 aspeto. Pero pwede naman nating silipin na parang himayin yung mga presentation ni Engineer Susan para makita kung ano talaga doon sa mga specific issues doon. Doon po sa mga dalawang naunang tanong kanina, ang mga immediate answer ko po doon is that yung kung manipis po yung pagkakasulat natin dito sa Water Security Roadmap, nandun naman po yung pangako sa atin ni Doc Bill at siguro sa NEDO na rin na yung periodic updating po gagawin po natin. And then yung sa isa pa yung kaya nga rin po sumusuporta rin po kami doon sa apila ng NWRB po for more resources kasi maraming kailangan pong gawin. Kung hindi sila palalakasin, walang regional representation, mahirap po lahat yung mga ipasatupad po itong ating water security roadmap. So kapit-kapit po yun yung good governance, financing, gender, and yung the things that we need to do. So yun muna, Ms. Claire.
Thank you, sir, for that additional answer. So we hope na nasagot po natin ang tanong ng Ms. Yoli regarding the importance of women in water management. So, okay, salamat po. Our next question is from Jester Andres. Hi, ma'am. Is there an ongoing study regarding salt water intrusion along the coastline of Region 1? Siguro po, it's also a concern. So, are we going to answer this in today's forum, ma'am?
For Region 1, we have not done a study yet for Region 1, but for the Agno River Basin, that's part of that one. And the saltwater intrusion is also included in that study. Okay. And we're conducting groundwater management plan, and the impacts of saltwater intrusion is also included.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you po for the answer. Our next question is from Marvelous Daniels or Daniels. What are other possible short-term activities related to water management that members of the community can implement? So siguro po ito yung mga activities na our people from the ground can implement. Example po siya like tree planting or reforestation. So ano pong sagot natin dito?
Sa ground, Miss Claire, water demand management should start at home, di po ba? So water conservation is part of the water demand management. So we could conserve water by say there are tips, okay? Because you know at home when you water the plant, you water it with clean water. When you wash the car, you wash the car with clean water, the same quality of water that we are drinking. So probably this could, we need to use recycled water or even rainwater in this case. Okay. Thank you.
So tama, ma'am. I support you in that. So yun nga po, simple water conservation activities at home. Yan po yung mga, dyan po tayo mag-umpisa. So yan nang encourage natin ang ating community to start at home. So meron pa ba tayo idadagdag, sir? Yes, sir. Doon sa tanong po natin. Sir,
Yung
si
Claire,
Director.
dagdag ko
Yes,
pa,
ma'am. Sige po.
yung tree planting kasi, it's okay, but we need also to be careful on the species of plant that we will be planting, because sometimes we waste money on planting plants that hindi naman pala right species. Okay, thank you.
Opo, yung mga plantito at plantita natin dyan, baka masyadong marami yung tubig na nako-consume ng mga plants natin. So, ayan po, piliin din natin. Okay, si Dr. David po ba may add din?
Alam mo na, Ray Claire. I'm good. Okay muna.
Okay, okay po. Sorry, sir. I thought kay add kasi nag-open bigla yung video. Okay po. For the next question, DNR Region 2, Jose Bueno Jr. Ma'am, how about water balance study within the major river basins in the country?
In fact, we have already started the comprehensive water resource assessment for major river basins. In fact, we conducted already 6, but the problem here is the funding that is being given by the DBM to NWRB. But we already conducted several comprehensive water resources assessment by river basins.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
Meron,
Claire?
yes, sir. Apo, sige po.
Yes, we have an ongoing project, no, with NEDA, no, which is being supported by JICA, no, and part of that project, no, on the national survey, no, on the collection of data, is part of that project is pag-conduct ng water balance study, no, in at least 3 water resource regions, and as mentioned by Yusek Eric kanina, no, our aim is to once these pilot areas are completed, we would like to expand this, no, to the other water resource regions, no, meaning other parts of the country, no, outside of this part pilot areas on water resource region 7, 11, and 5, no. So outside of these water resource regions as pilot areas, we would like to expand this in other parts of the country, and that's where the resource requirement, no, comes in, no. Ito yung gusto nating i-push with our government, no, in supporting this, because this is also part, no, a major part, no, of the project is yung pag-conduct po ng water balance studies.
Thank you, sir, for that answer. So right now po there are so many questions, but I would like to read the comment. I think this is not a question, a comment from Sir Chris Ilagan of PWP. Hi, sir. I think there are a lot of good plans and programs in this roadmap. However, key to implementation is a good grasp of which efforts will move the needle in terms of enhancing the country's water security, who will be accountable for delivering these move the needle activities, and how much it will cost, and to be paid by whom. Thus, if not yet done, I strongly suggest we consider developing an elaborate implementation plan, log frame, and figuring out which of these should be prioritized for a more focused pursuit of those things that will make the largest difference in our local water security. So thank you so much, sir, for that suggestion. It's the nitty-gritty of the plan. So thank you, sir, Sir Chris. Okay, for our next.
If I may add, Claire, no, I think
yes, sir.
Thank you, Chris, no, for that comment. I will take note of that, no, and we'll consider that in the succeeding, no, initiatives, no, as part of the post roadmap implementation or continuous updating of the project.
Yes, sir. Opo. Si Yusek Planta rin po.
Yung comment ni Bill. Maraming salamat rin at Chris. Parang ang naman natin, di ba, parang yung opportune time po kasi we're now technically transitioning to a new team. So yung panukala ni Mr. Chris will be considered po yan in crafting the next game plan of the incoming team. So pagtulungan po tayo para yung mga kakulangan dito kung meron man, puno natin sa susunod na Philippine Development Plan at the minimum. Salamat.
Okay, salamat po, sir. Thank you for answering to the clamor of Sir Chris. So, yan po. Okay, for the next question from DNRPPS, Maria Teresa Lumbang, is the absence of one of the pillars, 1, economy, 2, environment, and 3, rural household, 4, urban and water security, and 5, resiliency, in the roadmap, connote that there will be a problem for water security? Why? So, ano po ba ang nire-refer nating absence of one of the pillars? Which pillar are we referring to, Ma'am Lumbang?
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. In
Yes,
any
po.
of the 5 that was mentioned by Engineer Susan, so absence of one of that, how will it affect the roadmap in a macro, in a general sense? Thank you.
Okay po. Hi, Ma'am San. Ayan. Sir, si Sir Music Planta po.
Si Susan yung, para unahan ko siguro si Engineer Susan. Pag tinignan niyo po yung framework natin, yun dun sa yung consistent po siya sa yung ADB's Asian Water Development Outlook. So yung 5 pillars po, ang ginagawa po nila, may lahat ng mga elements doon, mayroon pong point system. So technically, kung sinabi natin nawala yung isang pillar, 0 yung score mo doon. So parang pagdating sa overall rating, mabababa ka. Parang yung ang ginagawa po nila sa ito pong rating system ng Asian Development Bank, ginagawa po ng mga academics po yun eh. So pag yung mga let's say below 40 ka, mahinang klaseng sa pagpapatupad ng water security plan. So, ganun po. So, yung Pilipinas po dun sa scoring nila, nasa gitna po tayo, level 3 yata or ganun po eh. So, pero what we're saying is that if we're missing in matutulungan yung ating water security roadmap. Parang ganun po yung appreciation ko sa tanong and yun na rin po.
Thank you, Yusek.
Back to you, Ms. Claire.
Salamat. Opo. Thank you, Yusek Plata. Salamat po. Ma'am San, do you want to add to the po? Yes,
Yeah, I think it will affect kasi yung pillar they are all connected to water as a consequence for water security. So sabi nga ni Sir Eric, kaya tayo may monitoring, evaluation, and learning dun sa dulo so that we could score kung alin ba yung may kakulangan. Okay? So yun, Ms. Claire. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am San. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Ma'am Susan. Maraming salamat, Yusek.
Okay, thank you po. For our next question, we have a lot of questions right now. So we'll try to address everything in this forum. So from Lorma, Andrew, sorry po ha. Medyo hindi ko makita yung pangalan. Okay. From Lorma, Andrew, Cesar, rehabilitation of watersheds is one of the major solutions to water problems. However, laws are lacking to declare many watersheds as protected. How will you coordinate this? How will you coordinate with Congress to make more laws to protect and declare watershed protections? Many parts of our watersheds are given tax declaration ownership by LGUs.
Mahirap yatang si Sir na lang yan.
Okay. May we ask our panelists?
Yeah. of course, yung mga watersheds natin, no, are the health of yung ano natin, we have to recognize that the health of our watershed, no, plays a lot in the health of our river system, or also, no, yung mga health of our water. That's, I think, we have isa nga po sa solution talaga diyan is yung ano, no, yung how to we preserve, no, the health of our watershed, no, including, no, yung rehabilitation in some of the degraded areas, no. So I think we have to play, no, strong advocacy on that, no, how do we protect, no, and declare sa watersheds if we think, no, that they are really, no, plays a lot of role, no, in providing yung accessibility and availability, no, ng mga water sources po natin, no. So very important po yan, no, even most of our projects, I think even sa DNR po, they're giving a lot of importance, no, in the role of watersheds in all its activity. That include, no, yung protection of our water or river system po.
Thank you, sir. Salamat po for addressing the question. We hope na-address naman po yung katanungan. So, for our next question, iba po mga question natin, we'll just answer through the chat kasi po madali lang naman siyang masagot, like yung availability of our water balance study. So we'll just answer it in the chat. But there's another question. Okay, from Chris Raselis. With all the programs, projects of the NWRB, how can it be felt and appreciated by our marginalized sector? Kasi sa city pa lang po, sobrang hina na ng pressure ng water and even to the point na nawawala ang supply in a day. Sir?
Di ko na, medyo nagsama yung signal ko, Claire. Ano daw?
Okay po. Yes, sir. Opo, ito yung question nila. So, with all the programs, projects of the NWRB, how can it be felt and appreciated by our marginalized sector? Kasi sa city pa lang po, sobrang hina na ng pressure ng water and even to the point na nawawala ang supply in a day. From Chris Raselis.
Yeah, isa po yan sa mga I think if Yusek Eric can confirm that. Isa po yan sa mga yung sa mga key performance indicators natin on the Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan, no. So ang objective naman po natin diyan is to provide universal access, no, to water consistent, no, with the SDG 6. That includes, no, yung sabi nga natin when we say access, no, yung appropriate, no, standards po ang tinitingnan natin diyan. So I think that will be part, no, of the address, no, or activities na kino-consider po, no, in the Philippine Water Supply Sanitation Master Plan.
Thank you, sir. Would Yusek Eric like to add to that, sir?
Lulupit na mga tanong. Yeah, siguro ang basic na response kasi dito yung importansya po ng regulator natin sa sector kasi parang it specifies code of conduct, yung sinasabi po na ni Doc Bill na KPIs. Ang kaso mo po baka po yung regulator natin diyan hindi NWRB o kaya yung yung LUA as a regulator ng water districts. Yun. So pwedeng yung sa enforcement rin po, paano po nasisilip rin ng NWRB. So magandang ibalik rin po sa NWRB rin po yun Malaki po talagang problema sa baba. Yung pong kakayahan ng regulator ang na-challenge. Kaya nga po yung babalik ulit po doon sa gusto namin na palakasin po yung regulation sa sector kasi para makita na ma-ensure na yung proper incentives and behavior yung pong nagpapalakad ng water supply and sanitation systems natin sa baba. So hanggat wala po kasi malakas na oversighting dyan, mangyayari po yan Along with that oversighting comes with it yung resources po na tumulong rin sa mga water service providers natin. Yun po yung sa pananaw po namin sa NETA. Ms. Claire.
Thank you, sir. Salamat po for adding that answer to the query. Salamat po. Okay, we'll proceed to the next question. Ito po, pagsusunurin ko na lang ito po, dalawa yung kanyang katanungan from DVO Engineer Christie. Will there be a Department of Water Resources? And who is the accountable government agency to take stock of SDG number 6 for Agenda 2030, MEL of the country?
Sige, ako na yung mauna, Ms. Claire, kung may
Yes, sir.
dagdag lang sila. Yes, dapat meron tayong Department of Water. Yan kasama yan sa itutulak namin sa susunod na team. Kasi itong usapan natin ng water security roadmap, kailangan talaga yung parang yung magtitimon po ng responsibilidad. Ganun rin po yung sasagot dun sa SDG 6 kung wala po sila, lahat tayo ay accountable pero walang accountable. Parang yung delivery po palaging mako-compromise kasi maraming agencies na iba-ibang mandato po. So marami na pong pag-aaral yan kung paano po natin ayusin yung sector. So yung why hindi na po parang siguro hindi pa lang naipapaliwanag namin sa karamihan, pero yung it's not just as in the current mga nasa position po, pero even po academics, previous Philippine development plans, kasama na po na yung importansya po ng reform sa institutions. Kaya nga po parang paano natin ma-achieve po yung SDG 6 kung wala naman tayong tinatayang ahensya na sasagot po nito. So magagawan pa rin natin ng paraan pero hindi kasing bilis ng sinasabi sa SDG 6 na which by 2030 safe water and sanitation for all. So ganun lang po yung paikot-ikot na kwento niya. Clear?
Yes, sir. Salamat po. Meron po, sir, Dr. David, would you like to add to the query?
Yes, I think I'll agree with Yusek Eric here, no, yung mga accountability on the SDG 6 sa ngayon kasi yan, no, yung ibang mga objectives tsaka targets are usually for the Philippine part, although the Philippines is a signatory, no, part of its commitment in compliance sa SDG 6. Sa part ng Philippines kasi medyo yung yung mga specific, no, objectives diyan ay sabi nga ni Yusek Eric, tayo accountable lahat, no, but of course as para sa government medyo spread yan sa ibang ahensya. At the need, no, for a specific agency like an apex body like Department of Water para makapag-team nito para makita yung coherence, no, yung mga actions ng government to comply with the SDG 6.
Thank you so much, Yusek Planta and Dr. David. Sabi nga po natin, di ba, we always say in our speeches na everyone's responsible. Pero syempre, there should be someone on top. So ayan po ang sagot ng ating mga experts and panelists regarding the question on Department of Water Resources kasi marami yata pong nag-aabang. Marami mga katanungan po regarding that. So thank you so much po. Okay, so I think we are down to the last 3 questions. So ito po, babasahin ko na. From PWP Bioli Gomez, with the Water Security Roadmap and the Philippine Water and Sanitation Master Plan, who will be the one responsible to ensure that these are implemented? NEDA po ba? Sino po ba?
Ang namin kasi dyan, yung kwento namin kanina, isasama po natin hanggat maaari po yung sa Philippine Development Plan kasi produkto po ito yung National Water Security Roadmap at saka yung PWSSMP, ganoon din po, inclusive po siya. So ipapasok po natin siya na matatrack po natin yung progress. Ang isa pa pong hindi namin siguro na ipaliwag ng maganda is that ito pong Philippine Water Sanitation Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan, embedded rin po dito, nakapasok po dito sa Water Security Roadmap. So kung anong tinaya po doon sa PWS SMP, kasama rin po sa Water Security Roadmap. And dito rin sa pagkakadesign po natin ng roadmap, meron po siyang MEL, yung Monitoring and Evaluation and Learning. So doon po, so parang bantayan po yan. Meron pong, ang kagandahan po ng mga master plans natin is that meron pong ahensyang nakatayang implement at matatrack po natin yan. Siyempre, ang ano na lang po dyan is that again, meron pong mga cross-cutting concerns po yan. Yung kaperahan po to implement this suggested reform agenda, mag-figure out rin po doon. Kaya nga parang iniikot namin na tinatighten yung argument na bakit kailangan natin ng sector reform agenda. So yun, Ms. Claire.
Thank you, sir. Yun, Miss Yoli. Aligned naman po tayo from yung pinaka-master plan natin. Okay po, sana nasagot ang tanong. So, ngayon po, we are down to the, I think, last question. Pero po, meron pa po bang mag-add regarding that before we proceed? So actually, our last question is, okay. From Menro LGU Pavia, any programs for water assessment exploration for those urban areas that NWRB could extend? Example, georesistivity and other exploration tools. Is this available from the agency? Thank you. Sir, Dr. David?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. No? For the water resource assessment exploration program, particularly for groundwater, ay ano po yan, no? May plan naman po ang NWRB, may regular activity study yan that we are targeting specific municipalities or areas, no, as part of our groundwater resource assessment and the establishment of a groundwater management plan, including monitoring. But ang isa rin po natin titingnan din, we have to recognize, no, the contribution of other branch or other agencies, no, of the government, particularly the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, no, who are also, no, conducting groundwater vulnerability assessment. And every year ho yan, may mga tinatarget silang areas, no. I think with that, no, pwede ho nating pagtulungan yan to cover as much as areas as possible, no. But yung mga titingnan po lang natin in terms of prioritization, no, kasi of course yung mga manpower po ng government natin in doing such an enormous task ay hindi po ganun kadali, no. But our plan is to do it for the nationwide po, no.
Okay, salamat po. To the person who asked the question, ayan po ang sagot ng NWRB. Salamat po. I think there's another question. Pahabol po. This will be the last one before we end the open forum. So from Lian Daniel D. Vertudes, environmental science student from Cavite State University. One of the reasons of having a bad water quality is the rampant land use change. And my question po is, how can you regulate or at least apply sustainability to land use change in our country? Runoff management is one of the technical tools in the roadmap to address it. So, ayun po, question from a student of Cavite State University. So, meron po ba tayong sagot dito?
I think yung ano yon, that's already an answer, Claire, no? Dun sa question niya on the yung about the land use change, no? At sabi nga, runoff management is one technical tool in the roadmap to address it, no? I think ito yung sagot, no, nung isa nating kasama rito. But definitely, no, yung land use change is we have to that's one of our main concern, no, in protecting, no, the quality of our water, no, because sabi nga natin when land use changes, it also changes yung hydrology, no, it also modifies yung hydrological situation in an area. Kaya ergo it also affects no yung some of the availability, including water quality, no. But I think that's why we are pushing no for the yung pushing for the approval ng Land Use Act, because I hope na ma-address din doon yung mga how do you address yung mga land use changes that will also no protect no yung mga water system natin.
Thank you, Dr. David. Meron po ba tayong add dito, Yusek?
Yes, sige. Subukan ko rin magdagdag kasi ibabalik ko lang doon sa ating narrative kanina na parang regulation is one thing and enforcement again is another thing. So parang tingin ko magagawa natin ng paraan yan. Of course, kailangan natin ng legislation, pero ibabalik ulit po na yung kakayahan po ng NWRB. So talagang strongly supportive po ang NEDA na mapalakas po yung NWRB habang wala pa po yung ating mga Department of Water Resources at saka yung Water Regulatory Commission. So yun lang po, Ms. Claire.
Thank you so much, Yusek. Maraming salamat po. So it's good to know that there are students here who are actively participating in this forum kasi importante po, as said by Dr. David in one of the sessions for World Water Day celebration and Philippine Water Week, youth has an important role in water management. So salamat po sa inyo for joining us today. So with that, we would like to thank our panelists, Susan Abano, pakita ulit natin si Ma'am San, and Dr. Sevilio D. David Jr., and of course, Yusek Eric Planta, for their valuable answers to our queries from the chat box. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Sabi nga ni Sir, malulupit yung mga tanong. So, pero po, salamat din po sa malulupit na mga sagot ninyo. Wala po tayong hinindian doon sa mga tanong natin. Salamat po sa inyo. Okay, so before, that's the end of our Q&A, but the program is not yet ended. Before we proceed with the next part of our program, may I remind everyone to please fill out our attendance sheet. It's very important for us. Makikian lang po, fill out lang po natin. So salamat po. Thank you once again to everyone who participated in this open forum session. Okay, and without further delay, I would like to invite our Executive Director of the National Water Resources Board, again, Sir Dr. Sevilio D. David Jr., for his closing message.
Okay, thank you, Claire. First, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. So I'd like to thank all the participants in this Water Security Roadmap Symposium for joining us today and sharing us your valuable time. At sabi nga ni Yusek Eric kanina, medyo mahihirap yung mga mga queries at tanong ninyo. So may mga assignment po kami, no? Of course, aside from our reply ngayon and clarifications, I think definitely we will take note of your comments and questions, and will form part of our we will be considered dun sa mga succeeding works po natin related to this water security roadmap. And it was a pleasure to know that your enthusiasm and eagerness in participating in the conversation about our country's water security. I'd like to thank everyone who helped us in this endeavor, and of course, our partner, the National Economic Development Authority, particularly Under Secretary Eric Planta, for his sharing also his valuable time to this symposium. Our partners in the government and the private sectors, and likewise our appreciation to Ateneo de Manila University for assisting us in this project, as well as the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, for their contributions. And mostly, thank you to all the stakeholders who shared their most valuable knowledge, expertise, and time in the preparation and formulation of this roadmap. No? Yung journey po natin ay hindi madali at medyo challenging. But I think with your support, sabi nga natin, I think we can move forward and jointly, no, in pushing yung mga efforts natin in securing the water of our country. So before we end this program, I'd like to note that we have presented, what we have presented, no, is just a roadmap. So a plan, a guide towards our goal of water security. Hence, this is just the beginning. Umpisa lang po ito of our real work before us. And may I invite all of you to help us in achieving the goal of this water security, and help NWRB also, because we think water is a shared responsibility. So with that, have a pleasant day ahead of us. Maraming salamat po and mabuhay. Back to you, Claire.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. David, and again, kay Yusek Planta, and to Ma'am Susan, and to everyone who made this possible. So maraming salamat po sa inyo, and sabi nga na congratulations to all of us, because this is a really an effort of everyone. And with that, that's the end of our program. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we wish you a pleasant and more fruitful day ahead. So maraming salamat po. Have a good day, everyone. God bless.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you lahat.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Thank you,
sir.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Yusek.
Ayan, Yusek.
Ay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Nakikinig lang ako kasi doble yung mga meeting ko dito.
Hindi natin napasagot si Yusek.
Ay, sir, happy birthday.
Nandiyan ka naman.
Yusek Eric, birthday ni Yusek Chairman, si Chairman natin ngayon.
Ganun ba?
Salamat.
Happy birthday, sir.
Salamat.
Everyone who are still here today,
I'm
let
still
us greet a happy
estudyante
birthday.
pa lang ako dito, kaya nakikinig ako kina Dr. David at saka kay Yusek Eric kanina. Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'd like to acknowledge, for everyone who's here, still here, we'd like to acknowledge our presence of Yusek Benito Antonio De Leon, the Undersecretary for Attached Agency of DNR. So maraming salamat, sir, for joining us. Happy birthday po.